Greetings! In today's video we're going to be reviewing Episode 3 from Star Trek Discovery Season 3 entitled People of Earth, written by Bo-Yeon Kim and Erica Lippolt, and of course directed by our old friend Jonathan Frakes. Now if this is your first contact with us, welcome aboard. My name's Carl Bromley and this is the Trekkie's Guide to the Galaxy. Right, let's have a quick plot summary, and I mean quick because I want to get into the detail of this episode. So, Burnham has found the Discovery and there's a big emotional reunion. Burnham brings the crew up to date with everything that she's learned in the last year. Saru is finally made captain, and Burnham introduces them to Book. He docks his ship in the shuttle bay, and the Discovery jumps to Earth in search of Starfleet Admiral Senatal, who sent out a message 12 years prior to any remaining Federation ships. They receive a less than warm welcome from the United Earth Defence Force. They're boarded for inspection and find themselves stuck in the middle of a fight between a group of raiders trying to steal Discovery's dilithium and the UEDF. After a clever little manoeuvre, Burnham and Book manage to kidnap Wen, the leader of the raiders, and with some diplomatic skill from Saru, they manage to open a dialogue between the two parties. We meet Adira, an apparent teenage genius who turns out to have a Trill symbiont that is in fact Admiral Senatal. Captain Ndoye agrees to Adira remaining on the Discovery, and the crew get to visit a big tree that used to be Starfleet Academy. Well, first things first, to me, this is one of the best Star Trek Discovery episodes there is, and whether you're a fan of Discovery or not, you'd be missing out on some fantastic Star Trek if you didn't watch this episode. It feels like the series has really found its feet this season, and this episode ticks all the boxes for me. The standalone story for the episode is Trek through and through, with the crew of Discovery managing to broker talks between enemies, but at the same time, it's also helped move the season story forward a bit. We get more character development with Saru's promotion to captain, seeing how a year without her shipmates has changed Michael Burnham, and also the rest of the crew starting to realise the magnitude of what they've done. And we get the introduction of what looks like another principal character, at least for this season, and it seems clear to me where the next step of our journey will be taking us. What's not to love? Well, maybe the fact that Burnham seems to have gone through this entire character change in the space of a year. Now, I get that she's gone through an extremely traumatic experience and been isolated from everything and everyone that she knows, and that she's teamed up with Book and had to adapt to survive in this new frontier. But when you consider the story that she heard from Aditya Sahil in the first episode of the season, and his dedication and loyalty to the Federation, well, I kind of expected a bit more from her. That's not to say that I think it's a bad change to the character. Actually, I think it's done her a huge favour and made Michael Burnham instantly more likeable and watchable. I just would have expected her character to have taken longer than a year to change. Oh, and that only a few hours ago Stamets was seriously injured and bleeding like mad in a Jeffries tube, but now seems fully recovered and ready to leap back into the Spore Cube and jump Discovery to Earth. Where were Culber and Reno during this episode? But seriously, other than that, what's not to love? We get a beautiful reunion scene between Burnham and the crew as she beams aboard, and I love the acknowledgement between Michael and Giorgio. The fact that Giorgio is even there very subtly confirms that she does indeed still have that emotional attachment to Burnham. And it's all just said in one quick look and nod. I think we can be pretty sure now as well that the story arc with Lieutenant Deppner is going to head down the PTSD route, as during Burnham's explanation to the bridge crew, bringing everyone up to speed on the burn and the fact that the Federation is gone, she's the one who's most emotionally affected, asking Michael how many died and shedding a single tear on learning it was millions. And I want to shout out to Emily Coutts here. The character of Dettner has never really been given much screen time. She's one of those she's always been there, but we've never got to know her. And this season it looks like she's really going to have a chance to carve out her character, and so far, she's doing brilliantly. And I think this is going to be a series-long B story, and I hope they don't just wrap it up and gloss over it, because I'm as keen to see where this is going, along with the other stories that are developing after just these first 3 episodes. Saru finally gets his full captaincy of the Discovery, and in my opinion, it's long overdue. He's stepped up every time the crew has been up the creek without a paddle, and has always guided them safely through the rapids. And he accepts the position with great humility. And throughout this episode, he proves time and time again why it was the right choice for Michael to give him the captaincy. Even though I thought it was a little strange that she didn't even want to consider the possibility of taking the position herself. Saru has always shown great leadership skills when he's been acting captain, but in this episode, we see him level up again. And I honestly think that he'll go down as one of the great Starfleet captains as we see more of him in this role. And also, if I ever get to ask Doug Jones a question, it's got to be, did he have different prosthetics for different scenes? Because, and I've never really thought about it before, but in this episode, for some reason, I noticed an incredible amount of expressions in Saru's face, and I couldn't decide if it was because the prosthetics are that good that they mimic Doug's own face, or if it's that he's portraying it so brilliantly through his eyes, his voice, his movements, that I'm just imagining it. So, while Discovery is making some repairs and preparing for its jump to Earth to find Admiral Senatal, we get a really emotional scene between Tilly and Burnham. And I think a lot of people will really connect with Tilly in this scene, particularly now. She's coming to terms not only with the crewmates she's lost along this journey, but also with the fact that she's never going to see her loved ones again. What for her has been a few days has in fact been 930 years for everyone else. And as we here in England enter another lockdown period, it makes that feeling of isolation and loss that Tilly's beginning to realise even more prevalent. And it's something that's been happening all over the world this year. Now, just to take this point and step outside of the review for a moment, a friend of mine recently made the point that as a Trekkie, you are part of one of the biggest families in the world, and that all those people we know and would normally meet up with at conventions will be missing you as much as you're missing them. So pick up the phone to them, drop them a message. Some of them aren't as lucky as others and don't have the same support that some of us do. And I guarantee you will make one of your Trekkie friends' day if you get in touch and let them know you care. So anyway, Mary Wiseman plays this scene brilliantly, because not only is she realising the losses she's going to have to deal with, she's also realising the changes that have taken place in Burnham, as she had to accept that she may never see Discovery again. And as much as Tilly knows Burnham, she doesn't know this Burnham. She's the first to point out the changes in her, and that she does seem different, lighter somehow. And you get a sense that, as understanding as Tilly is trying to be, she also feels abandoned by her friend, and she's trying to find something familiar in this new unknown world that will enable her to be reassured that things aren't different and that some things can last for 1,000 years. And as for Burnham, well, throughout this episode, we see that she's become a different person. Not completely, but certainly enough that we're not actually sure what course of action she's going to take. In the time since she's arrived, she's had to learn not only about what's happened to the Federation, but also how to survive, fortunately, with the help of her new friend Buck. And it appears that they've formed a very close friendship, although she's not his girlfriend. No, really, she's not. They didn't have... No, we're not talking about this. As she says herself when asked by Buck if it feels like home, it's familiar, but far away. And indeed, when she's talking to Saru about using Buck's ship to cloak Discovery's dilithium, part of me was wondering if she was 100% trustworthy, or actually hatching some sort of plot to steal it. Even Saru has his doubts about her motive and points out that her past year has altered her perspective, and she openly admits to him that she's the same person, but that she's not. She's had to come to terms with the fact that everything they believed in and made this enormous sacrifice to save has now descended into madness, and that she's had to adapt to survive. Now, she needs time, but the ever-observant Giorgio, being about as subtle as a brick, points out to Michael that she doesn't look too thrilled to be back in uniform, to which Michael tries to pass it off that she's just forgotten what it feels like. Now, I think that's a statement about more than just the uniform, especially with Giorgio's statement that once you've learned to live by your own rules, it's not so easy to follow other people's, and that Michael has tasted freedom that she never even thought was possible. Freedom from the obligations of what others needed her to be, and that she never really knew who she was without someone else to tell her. But now she's starting to, and that discovery no longer feels like her place. Michael is going through a journey of self-discovery, and it's not surprising when you think of her history. Parents killed at a young age, then raised in the Vulcan way by Sarek, then Starfleet. She's always followed a very structured existence, with everyone around her influencing how she should behave and who she is expected to be, whereas now she has to survive almost entirely on her own. And even the friend she has in Cleveland Book, a friend who's seen beyond that, is also making her question if this is the life she still wants. She's got quite a journey ahead this season, and I feel that she may often be torn between these two sides, with the likes of Tilly on one side, Giorgio on the other side, and hopefully Book as a middleman, helping her to realise what it is that she wants and supporting her in that decision. Indeed, in the penultimate scene of the episode, she's talking with Saru and apologises for not telling him her plan with Book, but that in the past year, there are things she's let go of, and it's going to take her time to find her way back to them, if she can. Saru shows again here why he is the captain, telling Michael that he will trust her to grow through change as she has trusted him. And I think it's fitting that Saru is setting up Captain Giorgio's telescope during this scene. It's always been there as a reminder of their past together, both ups and downs, but also that in the end, they've resolved their differences and achieved great things together. Now then, what the hell has happened to Earth? We arrive to find our shining beacon of hope, one of the founding members of the Federation, now a paranoid, isolationary, xenophobic planet, standing alone and under the protection of the United Earth Defence Force, with the express belief that they do not need anyone else and can look after themselves. They go so far as to say that Earth basically threw the Federation out because they were unsure if the burn was some sort of attack on it. So in the 32nd century, humanity was willing to turn its back on its principles and all of the progress it had made up to that point when it felt it was under attack, to prioritise its own safety above helping others, and to develop a deep mistrust of any other cultures, even to the point where it was so blinded by this fear that it was unknowingly fighting other humans because it had never tried to even talk to them. Now, I know a lot of haters of Discovery moan about the show being too political, and the writers throwing their own agendas in our faces, but seriously, even they can't deny the social commentary going on here is something that needs addressing, and it needs putting out there so that people can learn there is a better way forward. And being the next great Starfleet captain that he is, Saru rightly points out that way is to stop making assumptions and start listening. Sometimes, as was Captain Ndoye, you might just be surprised to find out that you're not that different to each other after all. So we come to one of the final scenes, and it's between our new arrival, Adira, and Stamets. Now, as we've all seen in the promos for the season and the teasers of information that were released, Adira is non-binary. And other than to say that my basic understanding is that they are a person who does not identify specifically as either male or female, I'm not going to go into what that is or what it means because I am by no means an expert, but I feel it would be very remiss of me not to mention it. Plus, the fact that Adira is not introduced to us as non-binary straight away says to me that this is going to be a journey of discovery for the character. See what I did there? And also for us, as the audience. Now, the thing I loved about this scene is how fun it was. Stamets catches Adira in the Jeffries tube after he and Tilly figure out what they had done with the transporter interference. He coaxes them out, and with a display that certainly caught me off guard, proceeds to win their trust in an instant by giving them almost a full explanation about the ship, the spore drive, and that they're from the past. Adira then confesses to him that the reason they became an inspector was in the hope of finding a Starfleet ship. Now, I think this scene shows us that despite his initial annoyances, Stamets is already impressed by Adira and has a certain amount of respect for this 16-year-old genius. And I also see the beginnings of Stamets taking Adira under his wing, not just from a scientific point of view, but also for an upcoming personal journey. Adira is young, uncertain, and, as we find out, is the host to a Trill symbiont of Admiral Senatal. And this will surely have happened due to an accident that killed the previous host, forcing the need for another host immediately. And now that this 16-year-old has the memories of several lifetimes inside them, I think Adira's character development will run alongside the series story arc, and that Stamets could end up playing a huge part in that development. The other thing about Adira that I'm really happy about is that their introduction was just there, the same as any other character. We already know that the character will be a non-binary character, and yes, I'm sure we're going to go on a journey to explore more about what this means, because the character has yet to go on that journey, and also that's the way the show educates us, and I'm looking forward to that. But what I also think will be a very important part of that education will be showing us the acceptance, and that this is a normal everyday thing without overreacting or highlighting it. Because certainly for me, that's part of why I've never had any trouble accepting people for who they are. In the best traditions of Star Trek, there's no bells and whistles attached to it, or this huge, oh my god moment. Star Trek shows these moments as everyday life because that's what it is. In exactly the same way that Stamets and Culber were introduced as Star Trek's first openly gay couple, it was shown as normal everyday life, brushing their teeth if I remember correctly, and just having these characters on screen accepted for who they are, with no emphasis on their identity or orientation, is a huge lesson in itself. The closing scene finds the bridge crew having beamed down to the old site of Starfleet Academy, and Tilly has found her constant, a huge tree which they all used to visit back in their academy days, that is still standing. And it serves as a reminder that as much as change is inevitable, some things are eternal, like cake. So, now to our rating. This episode is brilliant. I loved it from start to finish. I felt emotional for the crew. I felt excited for so many different things. The action, so many character stories starting to either open up or be introduced. The series arc moving forward and suggesting that our next move is going to be to the Trill homeworld. On the production side, how about that music? Oh, now, bear in mind that the music was all done remotely throughout lockdown. The score from this episode alone will be reason enough to buy this season's soundtrack. If you haven't already, go back and watch the episode again, but on high volume, and pay attention to the music this time, because it really complements what's going on screen so well. And it's some of the best integration of music and visuals that I've seen for a while. And of course, this episode was directed by Jonathan Frakes. And as every Trekkie knows, if Frakes is directing, it's going to be good. And he did not disappoint. The visuals, the angles, the camera work, the performances that he gets from the actors. I've enjoyed both of the first two episodes from this season, but I'm so glad that Trek veteran Jonathan Frakes directed this one, because it was always going to be a good episode with the script that it had. But this wasn't just a good episode, it was a fantastic episode. And we're going to give Season 3, Episode 3 of Discovery, People of Earth, a warp factor rating of 9. Well, thanks for watching, folks. We hope you enjoyed that review. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Do drop those down in the comments below. And also, if you haven't done so already, we'd love it if you'd consider subscribing to the channel. Give us a like on the video and then hit that bell for notifications so that you find out whenever we post any new content. Have a look around the content on the rest of the channel, and until next time, set a course for Discovery Season 3, Episode 4, Warp 9. Engage.